Nick, can you hear us? Are you
Yep.
there?
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Good evening.
Get the right workshop here.
Is Eric gonna join us? Anyone heard anything?
On a fire call.
Please on a fire call.
Eric is? Oh,
What was it out? I heard him going out 64. Yeah.
About 4:30.
Yeah.
Brush fire. That's not good.
Why don't we go ahead and get started? I know Commissioner Pearson will join us when he is able to do so. So let me call to order this workshop meeting that we're having on April the 16th, 5:30 p.m. The first item on the agenda will be to review and approve the agenda. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
Motion we approve.
Okay. Second. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand, signifying by saying aye. Thank you. We have an agenda. The next item would be the approval of the March 19th work session meeting minutes. Do we have any changes or clarifications to those minutes?
would they be approved?
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand, signify by saying aye. Okay, thank you. Our next item would be to look at the town board committee structure. I expressed my frustration. I was trying to get this out to everyone. Nick, I apologize that I probably didn't get it to you either. I'm having some type of email problem, but I left a copy here. And basically what I put down were what I've viewed as the big committees that we've had based on the past. That is finance, then public works, land use, public safety, recreation, and then also IT communications. And I would qualify that that was a committee that was rather active when we were working with bringing in broadband. It's a lot of work then. I'm not sure that it's necessary that we have it as a standalone committee now. And then I also listed some other committees that were listed, but to be quite frank, I don't think that some of them were ever used very much. For example, we had a sustainability and wellness committee. We had a scholarship fundraising committee, which actually was very active with especially Commissioner Steeler coordinating the efforts for the golf tournaments and the fundraising initiatives. We had a Bearwise committee, a business group, and a neighborhood group that we proposed or talked about well over a year ago. So this is where I think we are on the committees. The way they would be made up, and I know Nick has gone over this with Josh and myself, that the town manager would always be a member of a committee. The clerk would have to be a member of the committee because the clerk would have to record the notes and so forth. And then the department head relative to the different areas would be a member. And then we'd have two board members on the committee. So it'd be 5-member committees. So I'm going to open up the floor now to your feedback as a commission and see what you think we should do. Can we strike some, add some, and modify some? I will just say one other thing. The way I would like to see this go about, that I would, as the mayor, would make the appointments after consulting with each or the board members. And if we can get a framework today, I would even be calling for each board member to write down the committee they would like to be on. And I would make a commitment that depending on who wants to be on what, you would at least get one committee assignment that you wanted to be on, possibly two, but we have to kind of sometimes juggle things around to spread the load and so forth. So I'm going to now ask for feedback from the board members.
Well, I want to ask Josh, does he think IT Communications Committee, I mean, we were pretty active when we were navigating the state laws and how we could get broadband in here and that kind of thing. I'm not sure that we actually need that now.
The only thing that comes to mind would be like the power outage map and things like that.
The problem, well, and maybe this is something that we have to decide. If you have regularly scheduled meetings, then that's how you have to do it because it's a public meeting. And that means that you're either constantly canceling them or you're putting things off to your next regularly scheduled meeting. And I think it might be easier just to, I mean, I don't know how else to do it. Like recreation, do you actually need to meet every month or is it quarterly? But sometimes something might come up that you have just met and now you're going to have to wait another 2.5 months before you meet again. It's just the meeting schedule to me is what's going to be the
And I
difficult
recall
thing.
it was driven by the need.
It was
Is there a
driven by,
problem?
it was a standing committee, but it was called ad hoc. It was when it was needed.
Yeah.
And most of those committees were simply because other than in finance, you could probably do because it's pretty much just budget time type thing. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the logistics of how it works and we meet all the criteria of all the open meeting laws and everything else. Regularly scheduled meetings that you call and you sit down and you say, we don't have anything to say and we leave. Like, kind of like what the planning board or the zoning board does sometimes. And I don't know what other people's
Maybe I missed
thoughts.
this. If there's just two commissioners meeting, why does it have to be an open? Why does it have to? I mean, we never had them in Macon County. We had a similar situation, but
We had 2 liaisons.
Nick, would you respond to Commissioner Tate's question?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding, the question is, why does it have to be an open meeting if it's?
Yes.
It can be an open meeting. Why does it have to be advertised and otherwise? I mean, people can come to it, but if it's only 2 commissioners and no other voting member.
It's just because of the way the open meetings law is. If you have members of an appointed body that are meeting on public business, that is subject to the open meetings law. You can't carry out and transact public business without complying with the open meetings law.
whether it's one person or 3, correct?
Well, I mean, what one person can't really carry out can't be a public body. Under the open meetings law, it's all about what is a public body. And so if there's just one person, I mean, I don't know that that's a public body, but if you're having 2 or more people that are transacting public business and it's an appointed body, which this is, we had discussed before the idea of maybe just like informal discussion groups or what have you. But I think the will of the board and the mayor was to have an actual committee and to be an appointed members of the body, and that is subject to the open meetings law.
Just put one on that.
Well, or make them be discussion groups and you can call an ad hoc discussion with people who have expressed the interest of being on,
And I'm not,
in
it's
that
not,
discussion.
and it's not a matter of, we can advertise when the meetings are and where they are, and everybody's welcome to come. That's fine. It's not,
I agree. It was just that discussion we had a month ago when we
Yeah.
were trying to figure out how we could do committees and still meet the criteria of the open meetings law. And this is what
right.
Nick said was, these are open meetings if you have
Right.
standing committees. And he said they would have to have published schedules, meeting schedules and those kinds of
Right.
things. Like similar to the planning board that then just gets canceled when they don't have anything to discuss, or the zoning board, but they are standing meeting times.
Mhm.
Right, you could have a regular meeting schedule, just like you all have, and if you have to cancel it, you have to cancel it or whatever, but you don't have to go through all the, publication or anything like that procedures. You just have to have a regular meeting schedule at the committee.
So that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about advertising. We'll advertise them, but not, if
Well-
it gets canceled, we don't have to put out public notice.
Right. I think as long as it's put on the
Yeah.
your
calendar.
calendar.
Right.
That,
Okay.
that they should be able to
So
know
we're-
when the next meeting is
So
going
we're
to
really
be.
talking about the same thing. In some instances, like I'm on the Recreation Commission, and the Recreation Commission has two liaisons from the commissioners. And they don't vote, obviously, on anything, but we're strictly advisory. Because that is actually a county board. Now, there's also people that then are put on NPP. But that's strictly a liaison to a community organization, so that's probably different, I guess. I don't know, because our meetings are advertised.
Yeah, but we're making, well, the recreation and what we would be doing in committees, making decisions for recommendations to the full board, which
Right.
is part of the government, which is the public interest.
The difference, I guess, there is the fact that none of the liaisons from this board or their board vote on what to advise the commissioners for. You see what I'm saying? Obviously, they have influence, they're there speaking,
Yeah,
but they don't vote yay or nay on anything. They're not a voting member of that board.
I know, but you can very definitely lead a discussion.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I have two liaisons. Yeah, they tend to lead.
Put in the direction they want it to go.
Well, yes and no. I mean, because our board, yeah. But I actually lead the discussion because I'm the chairman of that board.
Well, but you're an outspoken person.
True, true.
I mean, I'm not
As
saying
are-
that in a derogatory way. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
no,
you're
no,
not, you are
no.
not shy about giving your opinion.
Understand. Understand. I guess that's might be why I'm chairman, so.
Let me just reflect. When I first became mayor, I went to the essentials of municipal government for newly elected officials. At the time, it was presented that if you have a committee with, two people, that's a public body, a public meeting. At the time, our previous leadership, town manager, we were having these meetings. Oh, no, that's not the case. And we turned that around because it was the case. And the other case that I've learned, for example, I sent each of you a document today. I did not send it as a group email, but individuals, because even that could be considered an electronic meeting, because then everybody start discussing. So I do think we have to adhere to the idea that when we have these committee meetings, they will be open meetings for the public to attend. Now, how we announce that and communicate that, that's,
And I feel like to forgive you to have to cancel meeting after meeting after meeting, it would be better just to, as needed, to schedule that meeting and give 48 hours notice.
Yeah. agreed.
yeah, that's fine.
That's what I'm saying, is otherwise we're time, and I don't want you to come to a meeting every month, 6 meetings every month that you don't have to show up for. You've got other things that you need to be doing.
Well,
And that 48 hours is within the law, the
Yeah.
statutes,
Yeah.
no
You have to
problem.
follow it.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of just having little committees, then we know if you and I are on one, and who else, the mayor or Josh can reach out and say, we need a meeting.
Right, I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. I'm just trying to figure out how we comply with
I
the
think
open
that's-
meetings law and advertising and all the
I think
rest of
that's-
that.
that would be the easiest way then, just set a meeting when you need one.
Yeah,
But, and then it would be the liaisons I guess I'll call it responsibility to, like, if they haven't met in 3 or 4 months, then maybe we need to
I mean,
call one.
we actually now have an app that could be advertised on the app, right?
I think,
Yeah, I mean, we put
And
it,
that's as public as
We
you
could put
can
it on the
get.
we put it in the paper and all that and put it on the website, but
It's
just
hard to put in the paper when it
48
comes out once a
well,
month.
Yeah. you put
I
it
mean,
on the
once a
web-
week.
You put it on the website, but it's 48 hours. And we put it on the website and we post it and send it out the sunshine list.
Yeah.
And you guys or
Okay.
whatever. So, I mean, everybody knows it's going on.
and,
And as long as we follow that protocol, you know, we can have them whenever we need them.
and I would say this, Commissioner Weller, if you're on a committee and you want to have a meeting or think there's a need to, just, the idea would be to go to Josh and
Call.
say, I want a
Yeah.
meeting called and that will be done.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah.
fair
Yeah,
enough.
because he's on every committee,
Mhm.
unfortunately, Josh.
And then we know if it's, you know, whatever topic it is, like, you know, Commissioner Tate said, we know who's going to be meeting for that
Right.
topic.
Right,
But-
right. I just wanted to meet the criteria of the open meetings law, but logistically be
Right.
easier than on both our staff and us than to have,
Well, based on that premise, though, then I don't think IT communications should go away. Because we're just gonna call it as we need it, and we still have a pretty active IT department.
Yeah.
That has a lot going on around town, so I think it should still exist. If it's not like a set meeting, may not be quite as often as some of the others, but I think 1 through 6 covers the departments. The other ones, I think then we should, I mean, we could talk about it further, because those kind of extend into different directions, not just in-house departments.
yeah, I think you have, and that may be more liaison than it is committee member. And
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the way to frame that or not, because they're
Correct.
not our meetings.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, the business group or the neighborhood group, they're not our meetings.
Well, and just for the record, there is a business group and I'm the liaison right now. So we meet every other month.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't think we need to
We
set
don't
that up
set
as
it.
our
I just-
committee.
I'm told what time the meeting is.
Right.
And I go, so.
Well, and I will telegraph, I'm going to talk about this in my report. I think it's time for the community to start addressing attainable workforce housing and everything. Here again, I don't see it as our committee, but I think that there needs to be kind of a task force
Work
or
together.
a community group that would work together, which would include representatives from town and county and nonprofits and other organizations. So, and those kind of things, we're not really necessarily the lead. It's not really our committee. It's
Well,
the
none of
community.
these, workforce housing maybe, but none of
Yeah,
these
right,
are.
right.
Yeah, so I would just say that these would be, as needed, we appoint a liaison to that organization, let's say. Let's not call it a committee because they're not really committees, they're
Right.
organizations.
Okay.
And we can decide who is going to be or who is not going to be, or they can invite who they want.
So cemetery needs to be added.
Cemetery,
It's a must.
it's a must,
Yeah.
We'll
as
just dive
a
into that.
committee.
As a committee.
As an actual number 7,
Number 7, cemetery.
that is
I missed that.
100% town business.
Yes, it is.
Didn't used to be, but it is now.
It is.
Okay, so we'll
There's a lot to be
create
done there.
7.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then I think the others that are brought up and possibly more need to be, kind of be more community driven
okay.
and then request a liaison.
So Pat, I've just got a couple questions because I'm new to the process. And I have read as much as I can and I watched a couple YouTube videos from discussion, but so what we've established is that it would be an ad hoc 48 hours, go through the normal process for open meetings. So that I get that now. But what I'm not, and I understand the makeup, town manager, clerk, department head, and 2 board members. For some of these things, if we have like a neighborhood meeting, there's not really a department head, so that would not.
Those are not the big 7.
Well, we
Okay.
probably don't
Yeah.
need to
Well,
keep
that's fine. Yeah,
minutes for
that's why I'm
that. The
asking.
reason we have the clerk at all the other committee meetings is you have to keep minutes.
Right.
And I don't think those would have to have minutes.
Well, if you have 2 commissioners and and Josh, you would. So that's why I'm trying to decide, does one of these ones below come up and be an 8?
No, because I don't think so personally, because I
That's why I'm
think
asking.
that the 7 are actual functions of the town.
Okay.
The other ones are going to be more community but they're going to want a liaison or 2. We could have 2 liaisons. They're not our meetings.
All right. That gets to my question.
Yeah, as
And
long as
then
they're not our meetings.
Correct.
I guess my last question is that what are the objectives of the committees? I mean, is it as needed from the department head or the commissioners?
Let me respond. Let's say in Public Works, there is an issue, a challenge which needs analysis and investigation. That committee is the first step in kind of framing the problem, maybe coming up with options and so forth. Then they come back to the full board and do a report and suggest these are the ways we can, resolve the problem. Is that?
I
That's
think
very
it's a way,
helpful.
it's a way to enhance the work session process.
Yeah.
So that you can come, we're not, because at 12 hours a year for work sessions, it's going to take more than 12 hours total.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
all of these departments. That's an
Okay.
hour and a half per.
That's actually a
department.
great
Right, yeah, and you never get anything
It's an
done.
enhancement to the work session process.
And they could report at a work session or, at a regular board
Yeah.
meeting if it needed a quicker response or something like that.
I think it also acts as giving a little cover to some staff who are making decisions that they may be, is not cut and dry. It's not an exact thing like in recreation or in IT or in land use or any of those kind of things. Sometimes there's just no rule. A situation comes up and you need to get a more feeling than one person making that decision. And I think it gives cover to the staff that they have actually discussed it with
Right.
elected officials.
And it also gives, peace of mind. They're not sticking their necks out.
Right,
not
right. That's what I'm
knowing.
saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Giving them cover. Yeah.
100%.
So,
Okay.
which reminds me, I think we need an 8, which is HR.
OHR as a committee.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's another thing that I can see.
That's the rest of the departments, isn't it?
That's another thing that I can see, which would need to be not necessarily publicly discussed, but the board needs to be aware of somehow.
So,
Okay, so we have 8.
yep.
It's like I busted my bracket.
I'm gonna ask,
Oh, I
Is
do
it-
have another one, but keep going.
is it worth splitting the fire department and the police department, or just keeping them both?
Keep them both.
Keep them both.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that needs to be discussed about the fire department. So, we oversee the fire department from a fiscal standpoint. But then we're a small portion of the area covered by the fire department. And if you see where I'm getting at with this, there's a lot of people outside the city limits that are protected by, and part of it that potentially we need to have them be part of the process. But there need to be people from outside the city limits that are a part of that organization, part of that committee, part of a group. It may be a completely standalone group. I don't know. I'm just saying, if the fire department has, a liaisons and there's a fire department committee, it should not just be people that live in town. That's all I'm saying. I mean, we're 1/10 of the physical area
Yeah,
of the fire district.
I would, before would make that decision, I would ask the chief what he thinks, because I'm not sure how much they have so many regulations that they have to follow.
No, I understand that.
With less discretionary stuff than, I mean, Jim, you've been on the fire department. I don't know, or fire and rescue. I don't know what your thought about that is.
I agree with Jeff in the fact that I think it would be good that there's voices that come to me personally about fire department issues that it's like, we'd love to have a voice in what goes on. And most fire departments in Macon County, they have some type of group or board that oversees them, that helps oversee their budgets, helps oversee spending, just make sure things.
Well, That's because,
go correctly, but we kind of do it for our area.
because we're the only municipality in this end of
That's
the
correct.
county.
Yeah, and the town of Franklin does it too, but the difference is for the most part, if not all of the Franklin Fire Department, it's just the municipality of Franklin. that I don't think they bring out. So we're just a little bit of a different organization.
We're different
Hybridized version. But every other fire department has a board of people within the fire district.
Right.
So I just think it's
I'm not
worthwhile.
100% positive on Franklin, but I believe it's just the municipality and the ETJ areas of Franklin are covered by.
It's certainly not to be resolved today, but something we should discuss.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. They apparently don't already have a board. Is
We
that
got to
correct?
think on the fire department now, there's what, 3 people that live in the city limits. Even the fire department workers and volunteers don't even live in the city limits.
Oh, yeah.
So,
No, but I mean, Josh hires and fires.
right, understand. But just something to explore. We'll put that on the back burner, but I think we
Okay.
should talk about it and talk about it with the fire department.
But I think the
talk about-
fire department needs to make that
And between
decision.
Eric and Jim, they both have 20+ years each.
Okay,
So,
all right. We've,
So that would split out the police, making them separate. And I think,
it would,
yeah, I think that's what was your point, is we
yeah,
need to
that's
split
what I was
those.
talking about, yeah.
okay, all right, we spent a half hour on this.
Yep.
I'd like for us to, we've got 8 committees and a makeup.
Maybe 9.
What's the 9?
Fire.
Police is gonna get split, police and
Well, I
fire.
thought we were going to do that at a later date,
Well,
Well, we are, but what I'm saying is
but for right now, we have 8.
yes,
I'd like for us to approve the 8 with the proposed makeup. And then I would like to start soliciting, input from the board members as to what committees y'all would want to serve on.
okay. Do we want to just pass that on to you at some point or?
Yes.
Okay,
Or,
well, that way,
Yeah.
because Eric's not here, so.
pass it on. You can use this form. I tell you what, Josh, can we send out a form, an updated form and get them to
Sure.
respond? Okay, we'll do it that way.
Okay.
And-
Do you want a
and I would
motion
think-
or a consensus? Do you want a motion or a consensus?
Yeah, let me just say this. I would think that, each board member could, now that we've expanded it to three choices, and then we'll work on sorting that out.
And number 'em, 1, 2, 3, you'd prefer to be on.
And
Okay.
several things, Mayor, just so we're clear, we're in the workshop here, right? So we're not voting
Right.
on anything. And also, just to be clear, we're, as it relates to establishing and appointing for committees, that's something that the mayor does with the advice and the consent of the board. You can have a vote if you want, but it's not necessarily
We'll
required.
just do a consensus right now.
Well, the consensus is to have these 8, potentially 9 committees, and that be the way we would do it. And then if we need to, Nick, we can vote on the actual membership
And I will tell you this, what we'll
as a
do,
consent to what the mayor appoints.
we'll solicit feedback, consult, and then at the next board meeting in May, possibly have a list of the committees and the people on it and get a formal approval of that.
Right.
Will that work for us, Nick?
Yep. that'll work.
Okay, so everybody's in consensus then that we will come up with a form with the 8 committees
Mhm.
and then get your feedback. All right, very good. Now, we've got 1 hour.
I need the button, I can able to see who people.
Does
I
anybody
talk
need to take
you
a
know?
break? Nick proposed the rules for conducting a meeting. You've had those rules, and I'm sure each one of you have gone through them. I have a list of questions, but what I would suggest that we do is simply each person that have questions, ask Nick or discuss it among us so we can kind of get through this. I'm certainly anticipating some modifications and changes. And then, Nick, again, we won't vote on anything today. I don't think we'll have even any time. But at a regular meeting, we could then formally adopt the rules. It might be May, it might be June, just depending on how this process goes. So
Okay.
I'm going to throw the floor open to any commissioner who would like to start asking questions and making comments.
Can I just say, I think it might be better for us to actually go down through it and have everybody talk about the specific sections as opposed to my list that you'll have to listen to, and then you'll have to listen to Jim's list, and then Jeff's list, and then Bill's list, and your list. Just if there's any, rule 1, rule 2,
All right.
and maybe not. If nobody else wants to do it that way, I'm just
No,
saying.
I'm good with doing it that way. I'm just,
Yep.
I'm.
And,
looking through
and
my-
if you want, I can just give you a quick little, 3 seconds on what that rule is, if that would be
Okay.
helpful.
Well,
Okay, so which way are we going?
We'll go through
Well,
each.
well, I'll just start.
Yeah.
All right, why don't you do
You
that?
know me, I'll start. For one thing, I don't like them being called rules. Okay, I think they may be guidelines, but I think if you call them rules, are they exclusive, inclusive? Is this how we have to do it every time? We can't do anything different? Is this the rule? And can we be challenged that we have broken a rule because we didn't follow exactly the procedure that is in here, if it's called a rule?
So yeah, you can't really have guidelines. The statute and the rules talk about the rules of procedure of the board. So if you call them guidelines, I don't think that really conveys the same legal aspect of what the rules are supposed to be.
Well,
Great.
Nick, is there a statutory requirement that we have these?
No, there's
No,
authorization.
it's not. If it's not a statutory requirement, we can call them anything we want to.
Well, is that the case? If we do have them, do they have to be called this? I mean,
Yeah,
he's saying you don't have to have them, but if you do have them, does it have to be called that? I mean, I'm not gonna get hung up on that personally, but,
well,
Most-
could we have something that doesn't meet that criteria because we call them guidelines, or we call them standards of procedures instead of the rules of procedure?
yeah.
Because you can meet
I
standards.
mean, Yeah, I've adopted these for several jurisdictions across North Carolina. I've never heard of guidelines or and I'm not sure really what standards would change, but I'm just letting you know that North Carolina General Statute 168-71 says the council can adopt its own rules of procedure. And those are, to follow the rules of parliamentary procedure. And so that's the statutory authorization. I'm not sure if you call them guidelines or what have you, like, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of case law in North Carolina that, like, just because you call something doesn't necessarily mean that it is, it's what the actual content is. So if you have a bunch of standards or guidelines that look and walk and talk like rules, are going to be treated like rules. So now to your other question, you absolutely could not have rules of procedure. You're not required to have rules of procedure. But there, like I mentioned at a previous meeting, there's reasons for the rules of procedure. There's a reason to have it. And the reason why a majority of jurisdictions do have them, especially city councils and town councils, is to be able to provide the answers to the questions that will inevitably come up a lot, as it relates to things like, whether or not somebody can remote participate in the meeting, et cetera, where there's not a statute on point or a case on point. So it just kind of sets the kind of bylaws of the board and creates a roadmap and a way by which you can operate. And, I would just say, I don't think I modeled these after the School of Government. I modeled these after the ones that have been adopted all across North Carolina. There's no real gotchas in here. There's not like a lot of traps, as I'm sure you saw. I mean, it's pretty much what you all are already doing, for the most part. So, again, I don't think that you're setting yourself up for a lot of, and a lot of these are statutory as well. So it's
Right.
putting kind of all in one place.
My concern is you're setting yourself up to be challenged that you didn't follow a rule when you passed something, or you allowed something that wasn't in your rules to be done.
Do you have an
And
example of like something where because like, again, most of the stuff like as it relates to meeting schedules and things like that, all of that is statutorily
no,
provided.
when you conduct the meeting and the mayor calls on somebody from the input from the public during our discussion or something, can somebody challenge that because it's not actually explicitly said that that is allowed? It's not explicitly said it's not allowed. So that's what I'm saying. Does it have to meet this and only this, or can we do other things outside of it and still not be challenged that we did not follow the rules?
I mean, so when it comes to rules of procedure, that it definitely can be used to say like, okay, they adopted this ordinance or resolution and they didn't follow that. But what you have to understand is, as it relates to what a court is going to do if there is a challenge, if it's kind of like what they call a harmless error, that is not going to be something where like now all of a sudden the rule is overturned or whatever, because you had a limit for public comment period of 3 minutes, and somebody was cut off at 2 minutes, right? Like with few exceptions in these rules, they will not be a basis for overturning a decision or what have you. And most of the time, like I said, probably if there is a rule that was violated, that when you all were enacting something or doing something that was later challenged, it probably is either a statutory case law provision anyway. So the more minute kind of just what the way the board operates is, intended to really provide a safety net more so than a grounds for challenging.
And Nick, I will add this, as the presiding officer, if I make a mistake and don't follow the rules, I'm going to throw it back on you as our town attorney that let this slip by the rules and didn't stop me and make me follow the procedure. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I mean, that's my job, is to intervene. I mean, I think I've done that several points when I think that there's not
I know
a rule.
I know what
So
you're at. You asked this initially. So I think, I'm gonna see if I can, let's say we're having a discussion. There's been a public hearing, there's been discussion, the public comment is over, and we get into something, a new subject's brought up during discussion. Is the mayor allowed to recognize, no, like, I'm not allowed to, Amy's not allowed to, but is the mayor allowed to recognize somebody in the audience to ask them a question or have them speak? Or at the same time, does it open you up for anything if you do that in one meeting and then in another instance you don't?
no. So that's an example. Generally speaking, the mayor has the chair abilities to run the meeting. And so if he wants to have some people speak after the public comment period or not speak, that is not going to be considered arbitrary capricious. That is just him using his discretion to run a meeting. And so that's an example. So that's a very good example, actually. So when we don't have these rules of procedure, there's nothing to really say that about the mayor as it relates to his ability to call on people or not call on people during a meeting and things like that. This is giving those, that authority to do that. And so, if somebody was like, well, why is the mayor, saying that this person can't speak, but that person can't speak, etc., is like, well, that is in the rules of procedure. And if I get asked a question, which, you all do a good job of asking me questions, I would like to have a rule to go to and not just give you my best guess about what is the right thing or not the right thing to do in a meeting.
Okay.
So you do have that ability.
Well,
If the mayor
but
recognizes.
I don't, at least I didn't read where it was explicitly said that it says the mayor runs the meeting and can call on any board member and it needs to recognize the board members, but it never says anything about recognizing the public outside of the normal public comment
Okay.
period.
There's a,
And that's what I'm saying. Is it exclusive or inclusive? Is it this and only this, or do you have some discretion? And do we need to write that discretion in there?
It is not if there is something that's not provided in these rules, it says the very last rule is that you refer to Robert's Rules of Order when there's an issue not covered by these rules. So, you know,
but within that, within those rules of order, the mayor, if, again, go back to the example, public hearing is closed. Now it's a discussion among the board. But somebody wants to speak from the audience that has a vested right, you know, has standing or for whatever the issue
Right.
is, then the mayor can recognize them and there's nothing precluding him from doing that. However, if he chooses, like it's somebody, you know, if it's somebody that's been yelling or outspoken or unruly, he does not have to recognize them.
That's right.
right.
I can rule them out of order.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. When I first became mayor, we had the whole issue about locating the Verizon antenna on our cell tower. And some of the residents came up, they wanted to express their concerns. I turned the floor over to them, let them have their say. I wanted us to move on, and several people kept insisting on they wanted to talk, and we had already addressed their concerns or let them speak their concerns. And basically I had to tell them, you know, we're closing the public comment down on this issue because this is a business meeting and we need to make a decision. And you know, we've kind of had that tradition here that if someone's concerned about something, they can raise their hand and I can, you know, acknowledge them and let them make a comment or not.
Well,
Just
it
depending
seems
on
like
the
Rule
situation.
27 allows for that. It says you must
Yeah.
offer at least one period. It doesn't say you can only offer one.
That's
It
right.
says at least one. So yeah, makes sense. That you can have more than one comment period per meeting.
Or you can let people from the floor make a comment, yes. Mhm. And to be quite frank, we might be in a situation like that tonight at the formal meeting that we have over the noise ordinance.
Yeah.
I hope people will come and express their opinion at the scheduled public comment period. And then we can address it on the agenda also. Amy, does that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You know, as long as, as I said, my problem was dealing with lawyers over the years. Sometimes they nitpick at a technicality. If it's called a rule and we didn't follow the rule to the letter, then it gets challenged. And yes, okay, the judge is going to throw it out, but we got to go present it to the judge and pay somebody to do that.
Mhm. Okay. All right, I'm gonna bring up on the first page concerning the quorum and then open meetings and remote participation, because Bill and I have had this conversation. And it seems to me the way the rule is written, and I'm gonna ask Nick, is this grounded in the statutes? A commissioner can access remotely one of our meetings, but here it says they cannot be counted as a part of the quorum. You have to be physically present. So if you're not a part of the quorum, the next logical step to me would be you can't vote on an issue remotely. You can talk about it with the other commissioners in public remotely, but does the state say we cannot allow remote voting of a board member?
So this is a very good example of, you'll see that Rule 2 flows into Rule 3. I made those
Right.
consistent where you can't, because what happened was, I'm not going to bore you with all the legal history on this, But essentially what happened was during the pandemic, there was an emergency order in place that allowed for remote participation in board meetings. That when the emergency declaration went away, so too did the authority to be able to, have open meetings, done electronically. And so now open meetings are in person. What has recently gone up to the Court of Appeals, and there's case law on this, it has made it more ambiguous or difficult to discern whether or not somebody, when you have a body that is meeting and they're in person, whether or not there's authority for somebody to vote and count for quorum purposes for the purpose, doing it remotely. And so the courts have kind of left that an open question. And so as such, the guidance from the School of Government and in their recent publications, and my advice to other jurisdictions is, better safe than sorry. Just have that person, participate, but not actually vote on or count towards quorum purposes.
Okay, Nick, here's my counter. If a board member wasn't going to be at a meeting and he just sent a statement to Josh saying, oh, I vote this, count me as voting for or against. Clearly, I don't think that's legal because it's kind of like a secret, but they're not here to actually cast a ballot. But if somebody's there electronically, I could see where they're facing the public, they're interacting with the board to where I see where the courts might find that to be a question to be resolved. And that there's, for example, if we had a commissioner right tonight on the screen participating and the people are looking at that person just like they're looking at us, why not let them vote on the issue? I think that's the question. I don't know what the courts, like you say, will decide, but it's a reasonable argument before the court. Would you not agree, Nick?
It is reasonable. It's just questionable currently in the law.
Court's not always reasonable.
Courts don't always get together.
Right,
Well, and then the question is how many can be virtual?
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So until there is decided case law and or statute, I think we should, I hate to say it, but keep it the way it is.
Yeah, that was my question.
But down the road, we can revisit if case law changes
Yeah, but
or confirms if we
Confirm.
one way or the other.
in 30 plus years of doing it, it's very rare that we don't get a quorum at any time at our regular
Right.
meetings,
Right.
Okay.
I had one question, just as a clarification. You know me, I look at these things.
ahead.
In Rule 2, it says a quorum is the majority of a board actual membership plus the mayor. Suppose you have the mayor pro tem acting as is so that you have a majority of the board 3 plus the mayor pro tem?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to
Is
that.
that the quorum, or is it just the 3 and one of them can be the mayor pro tem?
Yeah, so if the
No.
mayor,
So what you do is it's basically a formula. You take the five board seats and the mayor, and you subtract any vacant seats, which we don't have anymore, and you get the number 6. That means a majority is 4. You have to have 4, and that can be with the mayor or without the mayor. It doesn't matter what the person's title is.
So in other words, 3 is no longer, if one of them, it's the mayor pro tem and can run the meeting, 3 is not a quorum.
Correct.
so, okay. Okay, even though the mayor is not a voting member, except in the case of ties.
Correct.
And that would come into play.
Okay. Well,
when you have
that's just a
one
clarification.
board
I
member
didn't know
out.
which way it worked.
I always thought it was 3.
I always thought it was 3 too, but that was my question because it says plus the mayor.
Yeah. Because that was
Right.
discussed at the essentials of government class that I went to as well for 3 days, but it was explained differently, so.
Yes,
Yeah, that-
exactly. That's what I thought too.
So in other words,
Mayor votes.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of them
And
are
those are-
member.
which makes the six,
Correct.
but we only have 5
Well,
voters.
in most of those, they had 6 plus the mayor, so it was 7. But still,
Yeah.
okay,
All right. Shall we,
yep.
we can move on or whatever you, questions?
Yeah, yeah. Some of these things are just technical things.
Okay.
Like to make them more readable, but, unfortunately, I did this a month ago, so now I have to refresh my memory of all these notes that I put on here as to what they actually mean. Under Rule 5, the B, closed session participants. These are additional. So the additional participants, in other words, does this rule tell you that these people can be in there? Period, end of sentence, and then the additional ones have to be invited?
By,
Right.
Right.
Majority vote.
Or, my interpretation of that is that if there's a town staff member or department head where that closed session directly connects to their presence, then the town manager has basically in the past said you need to be here to answer any questions.
But this says we have to take a vote.
Yes.
yeah, and which we did in a closed session that we had recently where we invited a representative from an outside firm.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
But that's not a employee, yeah, it's an outside.
correct,
Person.
correct.
Yeah.
But they were invited by us and a majority of us
Right.
agreed, so we all agreed.
Yeah, and just to say a reason why that's important is because as you know, one of the bases for going to closed session is attorney-client privilege. And we don't want to ever break that attorney-client privilege by inviting third parties in. So I would instruct you about that, prior to your vote on that.
When would that vote take place to have someone be in the closed session? When we go into closed session? Or-
Yes, you could do it in that closed session because that's your you're keeping minutes and you're able to do it for that purpose, or you could do it before you go into closed session.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
In fact, you could, in the motion to go into closed session, you could say, and to invite John Smith into the closed session
Okay.
with us.
All right. We'll do that tonight. Yep. Probably. Okay. Any other?
I'm gonna have my technical list.
Hey.
Unless you've
when
got
you
some.
get done, I won't have any, so you're, keep going, keep going.
Under Rule 7, scheduling the organizational meeting is the first meeting in December, which would be the meeting after an election. Is that because the way we have done it in the past is we have had old business, with the old board members, and then you swear in the new ones and have a new meeting. Is that all one meeting, or do you have to close the old one and open a new one? See what I'm saying, Nick?
I'm not sure I'm following. So this rule here, 7A, is that what you're talking about? The board shall meet
Right.
for
Right.
organization at the first regular meeting in December after the results of the election.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the concern with that rule? I'm
Well,
sorry.
the way we have done it in the past, just so we know whether we're doing it right or wrong now, is that we've had the old business meeting, basically. If you turn over half your board, they can't vote on the minutes of the past meeting because they weren't there. And they didn't vote, and they haven't had them to be looked at. So we have the old business, the things that we need to close out with the previous board members, and we swear in the new board members, and then we go on from there.
We call it new business.
we call it new business. So, and so that, I'm just trying to get the logistics of how this works. And this, when we have a scheduled organizational meeting and it doesn't say anything about, can we do old business and then go on to new business?
Yeah, no, I mean, this rule would allow for, and at the traditional practice of that first regular meeting in December after the results of the election certified, to have the, the new council members, the new board members there after the minutes are adopted from the last meeting, etc. You swear them in at that meeting, and they are then there at that meeting. This doesn't say they have to then, vote on anything or do anything or whatever. Typically it's a swearing in ceremony.
Well, that was my question. Is the way we're doing it a legitimate way of doing it, or does this change the way we were doing it?
I think the way you're doing it is just fine under this rule.
Okay.
Okay. We're rule 7 and 8. Any other questions?
Well, we usually do in A. I'm just going by the way we've done it in the historically. Halfway through A, the paragraph A, at the beginning of each year, the board adopts a regular meeting schedule. We actually usually do it in December.
That's what it says.
It says at the beginning of each year.
It says at the beginning of each year, which would be January, if you're talking about calendar years. I mean, calendar year, fiscal year, electoral
Doing 8?
year.
Well, it just says an organization, the first regular meeting in December. So if you set it in December, it makes sense that you would have to adopt it in January. Right?
I think Amy is on 8A. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, I'm on 7A.
Yeah, sorry.
So
I did say
8A, I
that.
think the only thing she's saying is
That's all.
normally our schedule for 2026 got adopted in December of 25,
Okay.
not in
Okay,
January.
yeah, I can just say the board shall adopt a
Makes
regular
sense.
Is that,
meeting.
yeah,
Which
If-
is what we've always done.
that's just a shift in a month.
That's just,
Yep.
right, a technicality. I'm just saying, if these are the procedures we have to go by, and I just want to make sure what we've done in the past can continue to be done, and maybe we need to make that correction in our procedures so that we
Yep.
do it correctly.
Okay.
Works.
So this is a matter of just moving it around.
It'll
Does that-
be
that
at
better?
the,
Changing it to December.
Yeah,
I could just strike at the beginning of each year, say the board shall adopt a regular meeting schedule.
yeah,
get
exactly,
rid of it.
exactly.
Yeah, that'd be
There you
better.
go.
It needs to be done.
Because then you can adopt it,
Maybe done
any, amend it, adopt it anytime. Um.
Okay.
Okay, some of these things are probably things that don't need to be talked about here.
Okay, I've got a question on Rule 9.
Okay,
Media within the town, I'm assuming when we announce it, we are following by going to the radio and to the newspapers. That's as far as we need to go in communicating meetings and everything with the media, correct?
It's only for those media that have filed a written request with the town for notices of meetings.
Okay,
So we don't have an obligation to just alert anybody and everybody. It's just the ones that I presume they call them sunshine lists. I don't know if Gibby has one, but
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
are you done with 9? Because I have another 9 one.
Go ahead.
9C1, the specially called meeting by either the mayor pro tem or town manager or any 2 board members delivered to the mayor and each board member or left at his or her usual dwelling place. Is electronically or telephone considered? Do we have to say, as long as if you send them an email, if you send them a text and you don't get a reply back, is that considered delivered?
Yes, that is delivered.
Okay.
Email notices are considered of meetings are considered delivered.
Okay.
Okay,
So you don't have to leave them at a dwelling if you just want to give them an email. That's why I
Yeah,
said,
or so you could leave it at the house if somebody doesn't have email or what have you.
Okay, I just, because the electronics is still up in the air as to whether it's always allowed or not, like the voting and all the rest of the thing, participation in the rest of it. Okay, that was just a question.
Okay, I see that. I had that same on my list.
And,
Okay,
and then if you go down to C, emergency meetings, 1, and it tells a notice shall be delivered to the mayor and each board member or left at his or her usual dwelling place at least 6 hours before the meeting. Again, can you do it by email and have a return receipt requested, or?
But I don't even think you need to have a return receipt. When you email it, it's considered delivered, correct?
Yeah, I mean, again,
It says it needs to go to your house. I mean, to you or your house. Is that personally, or is email considered
But it says
personal?
written notice. Or left at his or her.
No, shall be delivered to the mayor and each board member or left at his or her usual dwelling. Is email delivered?
Yeah, he said email is considered written notice, is delivered
Okay,
when it's sent to.
and if you want, I can just add, like in what you see there, notice may be given by telephone, email, or the same method used to notify board members.
yeah, that's what I was noticing.
yeah.
I could just add in
Because I don't
email.
look at my email every 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, 6 hours. I may look at it in the morning and I can't again until the next morning.
We usually have 48 hours notice. It's usually not.
Yeah, but this is calling,
I know.
this is talking about
We would
6
get it.
hours.
So if it says phone and or email or whatever, so. If we have an
So
emergency.
I just want to make sure.
Normally Josh gives me a call
Right.
because he knows I don't like,
I'll come
I
stick
don't-
a notice at your door.
yeah. Sometimes I don't go outside that day.
Most listening.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just me, so I don't know.
Am
Now that we have a
I want to
counteract.
make sure I'm understanding. Are you wanting to make sure the email is acceptable, or are you saying that?
Yeah.
Yes, I want to make it so that,
Email or phone.
well, but I want to make sure that everybody actually gets the notice. Not just, oh, I sent it out to you. Well, I had no idea. I didn't read the text, or I didn't read the email, or
Yeah.
whatever, or it got lost in my spam. I didn't know it was happening.
Okay, well, I can add language to make it clear that notice can be given by email in all these different notices provisions.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is to me, it's better to actually, the way Josh does it, is he calls you up and talks to you about it so that you know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no question that I didn't read my email. Or I read it half an hour beforehand and I'm in Franklin and can't get here.
That works.
Okay. I have a question under B, amending the agenda, and it gets down to, the board may not add to items stated in the notice of a special meeting unless the requirements of these rules are satisfied. Would you kind of explain that? Because I've always thought we could not, period, change the agenda on a declared special meeting.
You're in
Where are you?
12B2.
Yeah, page 250.
But which rule?
It's under B2,
12B.
amending the agenda,
12B.
12.
12B.
Okay.
Yeah, on page 250.
Yeah.
So you're talking about in the situations when you have a special meeting.
Yes, and I've always understood that that agenda that was posted as a part of that special meeting, it's locked in concrete. You can't add or change it.
Deviate from it, right?
Is
Right.
that what that says, or is there?
Yes, that is what it says, and then it just says unless the requirements of the rules are satisfied, meaning if whatever you do, in advance to ensure that you are, complying with the notice requirements are met, then you can add items to it. In other words, if you want to add or subtract items from the agenda in advance of the meeting with the required notice, a special meeting goes out 2 weeks in advance instead of 48
Okay.
hours. As long as within 48 hours, you're sending a new notice that says, actually, we're going to be also addressing these matters.
No, got
That,
it.
but once you get into the 48-hour zone, you're locked in.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I had a question in that same 12 proposed agenda. I don't, maybe I've just missed it. How the public asks for something to be put on the agenda. It doesn't specifically say they go to the manager. Do they go to the mayor? Do they have a board member that goes to the mayor to?
Sorry, where are you?
Oh, and 12, and it's requesting 12A2, requesting placement of items on a proposed agenda. How is it doesn't in anywhere say what the public should do.
But I mean, if the public contacts one of us,
Then
then we go to the mayor. Or according to these rules, Mayor Pro Tem can also.
Well, I'm saying, all I want to know is, I want the public to know how to do it.
Okay. Okay.
Instead of,
They could-
how do I get something on the agenda? I want something in our rules to say the public goes to the mayor or the
or
town
board member.
or board member or however it is.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm missing. I don't see where it says the public. Are you in number 2?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There is no provision for how the public can do it.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, because the public doesn't normally set the agenda for the board meeting. That's
No,
usually
but
set
if
by.
they say they want something on the agenda, want you to discuss something on an agenda, they can come and we can decide whether to put it on the agenda or not. But how do they get something on the agenda as opposed to coming in just in the public comment period and said, I want you to think about this.
That's traditionally set by the board members and the mayor and the manager. So if a member of the public wanted to put an item on the agenda, they should do that through a
But
board
these are
member.
rules for us, not
Yeah,
rules.
those are
for
rules.
public.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
They would have to talk to somebody here
right.
and then most
Right.
likely go to the mayor or whatever.
But they'll come to these public comments and think that we're going to be able to put it on the agenda and discuss it tonight.
Yeah, understood. I mean,
Amy, you don't have to put it on the agenda. Robert's Rule of Order lets anybody add something to an agenda, as long as it's met with a majority approval. And majority approval typically in an open area would be any of the members. Typically, I guess in your situation, if I call for point of order, I want to add something to the agenda, the board would have to vote in majority to allow that to happen. That's Robert's rules.
Okay,
We don't necessarily follow.
well, no, at the end, it says, if there's a question, we follow Robert's rules. And I don't know Robert's rules of order
Well,
and those
pretty
kind of things,
complex.
Steve. You do. So we might say, you can't add anything, and you're saying that we could. So if you put it in our procedures, then
Well,
Well, and going back to what you were talking about earlier,
I'm sorry, Mayor. I cannot hear whoever's talking, so I'm not going to be able to respond to anything.
you come up to the front, Steve, or
just not turn that one on.
In answer to the question, and the question that was addressed earlier, according to Robert's Rules of Order, a person from the audience or a member, okay, now whether or not a person from the audience constitutes a member of the meeting itself, as long as they raise their hand and address it as what's called point of order. Point of order says, I want to add something to the agenda. As long as it's a majority, it's approved by the majority. The question then becomes whether or not it's a majority here or a majority of the attendees.
okay, here's my response. This meeting is not a town
Town hall.
It is a business meeting of the Board of Commissioners. So it's actually our meeting. So my thinking would be if somebody wants something on the agenda, they need to contact a commissioner or the mayor and make a request that it be put on there, and that decision is then done. But the last thing I want is people from the audience saying, I want this on the agenda, I want that on the agenda. That could become a pretty,
Well,
Well,
chaotic
and I agree
situation.
with you, but I think the stopping point then becomes that we are the audience, we are not members of this, that the members constitute the commissioners up here. And Robert's Rules of Order, I think, will allow the commissioners to vote, okay, yes, we will add it to the agenda, or we will not, postpone it to something else. I'm just going by Robert's rules. So.
I have seen it at the county level where we've taken public comment. And then it piqued our curiosity and we added it to the agenda right then.
yeah, and
With the majority of the vote of the,
well, but I've also seen it happen many years ago here, and my point, and I said we couldn't add it to the agenda because it wasn't publicly announced that we were going to be discussing this, and some people may have a contrary point of view that I need to hear too. So we will put it on the next agenda, but we will not put it on this agenda. So maybe, I don't know whether you need to make that.
But this, everything that's written in here gives us that discretion.
Right.
We could add it to the agenda, but we could
Don't.
also say we want to discuss it, potentially put it on next month.
That's what I agree with that. And what I'm saying is that if I come out there and say, I want, Robert, point of order, I want to add such and such to the agenda. And if you vote and say, nobody says like that, then I'm out.
Right.
I can't force it.
Right.
It is a majority of the controlling board, according to that. So.
Yep.
Just a minute, but
Right.
thanks.
appreciate it. Technically, that can be done because the first, item before we review that we have public comment.
Right.
So someone could request that.
That's pretty much the reason why I think it's
And
done.
when I call for the approval or the amendment of the agenda, if a commissioner felt like that request had merit at the time, it could be added to the agenda.
Well, and that was like Jim was saying has happened passed at the county level. They do take it up, but I was trying to make the public know that that's not the way we would operate.
Normally do it, yeah.
No.
It could be an
Because they-
emergency. Might be an emergency, something needs a repair immediately, something,
Yeah.
public brings up. I think in
But anything that needs to be discussed in public because there might be different perspectives
Yeah.
has to be, for me anyway, needs to be advertised because these are open meetings.
Depends on if it's just going to be a discussion versus any action.
Yeah,
And no action should be taken, certainly,
yeah.
but.
Okay.
Okay.
We've got 15 minutes. We're making some progress here. Would anyone now like to ask some questions about other items? And we were on page 250. We got page 251, 252.
Yours are numbered differently. We don't have those numbers.
Yeah, we
You have to
don't,
go by the rule number.
Okay, rule number.
Yeah.
It would be part,
What's the rule?
rule 14.
14. There we go. All right. I don't have anything.
This is where, to me, it doesn't say explicitly that the mayor can in fact call on the members of the public. Powers of the presiding officer.
Yes.
So the way it typically works in Robert Rules of Order, and the same would apply here in this rule, is that that if somebody is speaking from the public when it's not during public comment period, the mayor would decide whether that person is out of order or not. So a person speaking when it's not during public comment period would be considered out of order if they don't get the permission from the mayor. But the mayor has that ability and can say, under that rule there, 14C, where he gets to rule on those points and determine whether a board or member or other speaker has gone beyond, their standard remarks or what have you, that they, he can rule them out of order. That's typically how it's handled. But, if it's the will of the board for me to, put in there that the mayor shall rule on whether somebody can speak or not outside the public comment period, I can be, explicit about that.
I'm comfortable with the way it is, but
Me too.
That's fine, as long as that's our understanding, that the mayor may do things that aren't specifically set out in here. Did you get your fire out? No?
Hmm.
That's fine. I'm just saying, that's why I asked if these were rules and we do something that is not explicitly said in the rules, can we be challenged on that?
it basically,
Yes, no.
mayor could say yay or nay.
Yep. All right. Let's move on. Any on Rule 14, Rule 15, Mayor Pro Tem. And then 16.
I have a note here, but I have no idea what it means. Because it was a month ago. Oh. It was 16 and it was, and you have Rule 15 and it says, the mayor pro tem shall preside and with all the powers specified in 14C, and which is, you have to vote, you can't abstain just arbitrarily or whatever it is. And if somebody else is the presiding officer, under service as a temporary presiding officer, does not relieve the board members of a duty to vote on all questions unless excused from the voting pursuant to these rules. It doesn't say that above in the mayor pro tem thing, that just because you're mayor pro tem and the mayor normally doesn't, and you're presiding officer and the mayor doesn't normally vote, he does still have a duty to vote. Again, these are technical things that
Okay. Down to Rule 19, debate. Rule 20, duty to vote. Grounds for excludes, well, all right.
this is probably state law, and I just wanted Nick to explain it to me under, I think it's 20C or 20E, sorry. If I get to vote on certain developmental matters, normally an unexcused failure to vote is an affirmative vote, but not under not under, I guess, land use ordinances. Is that correct?
Correct. Under 160D, there, I don't know why those were carved
That's
out.
just strange that that's the only, that there's an exception there.
Yeah, that's the one time there's an exception.
Okay. So there's no real, I was trying to find the rationale for that.
It's the law. That's the rationale.
Yeah. Yeah, I could venture a guess, but it would only be a guess that, on development matters, maybe that sometimes they don't want to be considered, in a lot of places the mayor votes on zoning matters, And so, maybe they don't want it counting as an affirmative vote. They don't want to vote negative, but that's just a guess. I don't know.
Okay. But it's state law. I just trying to figure out why it was.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Other questions? I have one under Rule 24. And my question on that, we propose a written ordinance. And it can be amended at that point of review. And we do that, or I've seen that done here. That is allowed in these procedures, correct? If we got a proposed amendment that's before the board
Uh-huh.
on an ordinance, we can modify that or amend it in the process of review and then voting on it at that time.
Correct. Yes, you can modify the text amendment at that time and do it.
Okay.
Yes.
Open to any more questions?
Again, this is a technicality of under this 160D. If you have only 3 voting members plus the mayor, which it constitutes a quorum, and then it says, this is a 24A 2, must receive a proposed ordinance of any action having the effect of an ordinance must receive affirmative votes of at least 2/3 of the board's actual membership. So it doesn't say it's an actual quorum, it's the actual membership, which would mean that you would have to have 3 affirmative votes. Is that correct?
More than 3.
No, it's more than 3
More
because
than
it's
3,
2/3.
2/3.
It's only 60%.
Right, that's only 60%, which was what I'm saying. We passed things at 3-2. But what I'm saying is if you had just the bare quorum, which is 3 members
Right.
plus the mayor, and the mayor doesn't vote, could you pass something?
Not that day where you introduced it, but the next meeting you could. Because the next meeting is a simple majority. But in the meeting where it's introduced, it has to be a 2/3. That's the way I read it. So if you only have 3 and there's 5, that means you cannot pass it that day.
So you can't even pass it with.
That's the way I read it. Is that right, Nick?
I'm looking at the statute right now.
Okay.
So, but that's because it's the date of introduction.
Correct.
But we don't introduce anything 160D on the day because we send them to the planning board.
Well, but when we send it to the planning board, it's not actually already written up. We refer to them for,
We set a public hearing at a future meeting.
Right.
So that's never the date of introduction.
right, but once it's in writing is when the clock starts. Like, it doesn't start then. Does that make sense? Like the first time we have it in an open meeting, that's the day it's introduced.
Right, but in 160D, we're not even allowed to do that. You have to have it,
You have to go to public
you have to
hearing.
have it written before you can go to a public hearing. The public
Right.
hearing has to be, well, however many days it has to be. And so there is never the date of introduction that we couldn't pass it with. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, but I'm not sure I understand if that,
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand how that works.
So, 160A75C says no ordinance may be finally adopted on the date on which it is introduced, except by an affirmative vote equal to or greater than 2/3 of all the actual membership of the council, excluding vacant seats and not including the mayor, unless the mayor has the right to vote on all questions before the council.
so if there's 5 members, including the mayor, that means you'd have to have a 4-1 vote at And if only three people are here, it cannot happen.
Right, it does not, yes, it does not.
Yeah, that's why I
include
said
the mayor
more-
For that, for
Right.
on the date of introduction, right?
Okay.
Okay,
So even if it's all three, you
It-
can't pass
you
it.
can't-
Yeah,
not
'cause
on the
it's
day
it
it's
doesn't say
introduced.
president, it says total members.
Right, then that was my question it's the actual membership rather than the members present. And
But
I
he said
just,
that's the statute, correct? Is that what?
I understand.
No,
I'm just
asking.
trying to,
That's what he said.
that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
make sure that I understand. If I'm
Yeah.
going to follow these procedures, I need to understand them.
Yeah. I don't know that's ever happened, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't. Or couldn't. Could.
Right, because we don't ever vote on the thing that the
Right.
time it's adopted
Correct.
or first introduced,
Right. Right.
okay.
not for
Okay.
land use things, because we have to go through the planning board.
I have a question, and I know we're getting close to the end of the session here. Under Rule 28, appointments. Nick, tonight we have the appointment of ABC board member and planning board member under the consent agenda. Does that comport with this part of these rules that or do you have to have an open vote in the meeting? The board
Yeah,
members?
no, your vote on the consent agenda is a vote in open session. That is.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, that is meant to say you can't vote on board members in closed session. And you have to have a motion and a vote in open session, which that's
Right.
having it on the
Okay.
consent agenda. It's fine.
Now, we have just a few more minutes. I'm not trying to rush, but
I'm done. Amazingly enough, I'm done.
what would be the next step? I would think that, you'd make these changes that we discussed, Nick, and then bring it back at another board meeting for formal adoption.
Yep, I can bring it at the May meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I've been quiet. I just want to say, Nick, great job. It's very similar to what we used at Macon County, and I think it's so important for future commissioners. Bill, I'm going to use you as an example. How great would it have been for you to be handed a little notebook with page one, having all of our contact information, phone numbers, emails, how to get in touch with us. Page two is a list of our meeting dates coming up. And then the rest of it's kind of this rules of order that we might be following. It's just so beneficial, I think, moving forward for this board.
And I suspect and suggest that we'll create those documents for everybody on the board and, even for the public if requested.
I actually had one more, sorry.
Okay.
I thought I understood it and now I don't. And this is Rule 25A, and it says notwithstanding any provision of the town charter, general law, or local act. Does that mean despite general law, local act, we can act to the contrary? The board may adopt or amend the budget ordinance under regular. So in other
No,
words,
that's just a fancy way of saying as long as there's not a state law or the charter or something that would trump this, as long as those things don't conflict, here's what the rule is. But if there's a conflict, the charter, general law, or local act
that's
would.
what I'm saying. When you say notwithstanding, that means despite that law, we can do it.
No.
No, that's not what that means.
Okay.
Yeah,
Kind of
that
implies
means.
powers called in the Constitution. If there's no law or statute prohibiting it, then it's implied that we could act and respond. I think that's the way that's. the
Yeah,
concept.
this is one of those, this is the way the rules have always been written. If I were just talking in plain speak, I'd say so long as there's not a provision
Exactly.
contradictory in the town charter, general law, or local act, but notwithstanding any provision is another way of in legal jargon to say that.
Okay, because that's legal jargon. And if you actually look at the normal definition of notwithstanding, it's despite.
Okay. We are at the end of the hour. I will entertain a motion for us to adjourn unless there's any further question or discussion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
We're adjourned, and let's take just a few minutes for a bathroom break and reorganization before we
There you
start
go.
the main meeting.